and we'll do our best, very, very best to answer those. My name is Brian Batchelor. I am the Director of Clinical Development here at TB12. And again, we appreciate you being here. My co-pilot today in moderating this webinar is Anthony Poli. Anthony is one of our fine body coaches here at TB12 at the Boston Performance and Recovery Center on Boylston Street in Boston. Anthony's going to take the floor here in a couple minutes and just spend a couple minutes sort of laying the foundation for the webinar in terms of how we do things and why we do things here at TB12. And then I will introduce our very, very special guest. Anthony, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Brian. Thanks for that intro. So hi, everyone. Super excited for this webinar and who we have on here today. Likewise with Brian, I'm so excited to hear and learn today just as much as you guys are going to learn as well. So I'm Anthony, just one of the body coaches here at TB12. And just to get you a little bit more intro of what we are all about here at TB12. So if you look into this slide, our mission here is to help people do what they love for better and for longer. And that doesn't just go at the professional level as an athlete. As you can see in the slide here, we see a very diverse clientele in our centers each day, like including myself and all the other body coaches here in the centers of Boston or in Foxborough. So it's not something that has been so limiting and like what's helped Tom get to his level, but it's for everyone. And we do that with our pillars. So if you look here in our next slide, we emphasize every day each one of these pillars: hydration, nutrition, functional strength and conditioning, and cognitive fitness. And that all results into what we're all about here, and that's pliability, or how we essentially define how effective is your muscle and able to handle the loads that we place on it every day, no matter what that activity is. As you can read the slide, you can look on the chart, and if you read each one of them, you'll see that all these pillars are emphasizing a great role in helping our muscles be better, but it also plays an important role. And that's what, we have a great opportunity to teach everyone in this webinar right now about what's something that's so close to our hearts here at TB12. And that is that mind-body connection, or that muscle-brain connection. And we have a great host, and I'm going to let Brian take over and expand it a little bit more if he wants about TB12 lifestyle. And I just want to say, get your notebooks out, get your pens out, and get ready to learn.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's phenomenal. The experience here at TB12, it's very holistic. It's very individualized. And the nice part about being at TB12 is we have the opportunity to collaborate with numerous and fantastic corporations, professionals, healthcare providers, none better than today. I'm really excited about this today. Today we have Shawn Stevenson with us. Shawn is a best-selling author of Sleep Smarter and the creator of the Model Health Show, featured as the #1 health podcast in the US with millions of listener downloads each year. Shawn's a graduate of the University of Missouri, St. Louis, where he studied business, biology, and kinesiology, went on to be the founder of Advanced Integrative Health Alliance, a company that provides wellness services for individuals, organizations worldwide. Shawn's been featured in Forbes, Fast Company, the New York Times, Muscle Fitness, ABC News, ESPN, and many other major media outlets. He is also an in-demand keynote speaker for numerous organizations, universities, and conferences. To learn more about Shawn, visit themodelhealthshow.com, all one word. Again, Shawn, brilliant having you here. Really appreciate it. Let's go.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I'm so grateful to be here. And I love the fact that we have these 4 pillars. And today we're really going to look at uniting 2 of them specifically, the cognitive fitness and the functional training. And it's going to be, this is something that is so phenomenal, because exercise isn't just about getting abs. It's also about, in a certain way, getting our brain to have a 6-pack. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, and how all this stuff ties together. We're going to have a really good time. So make sure, again, that you're ready to take some good notes. And let's get to it. If we could jump to the next slide. So that's me. We'll go to the next slide. Okay.
There you go.
Okay. So we're going to just start really at the top here. And I think it's important first and foremost for us to understand that our brain we tend to think of it as a thinking organ, and it does have many different roles in that aspect: memory consolidation, recording data, making neural connections. But your brain is actually the governing force that's controlling every single function in your body. If we could jump to the next slide, we'll jump right into number 1 here. So we're going to talk about some basic brain building. And so thinking about your brain in just that one context of thinking, we also have certain glands in our brain, for example, like the pineal gland. We have a master regulating gland, the hypothalamus, that's literally regulating your blood pressure. It's regulating your thyroid gland. It's regulating your overall metabolism, and the list goes on and on. Any single function that you can think about that your body does, your brain is controlling those things. So it should be of the utmost importance for us to really work on training our brains to make our bodies better, at the same time to make our cognitive performance better, to make our just overall functioning better. And so I was in a conversation recently and this is the same thing with the team here. I get to talk to so many amazing people. And I was just talking with a neuroscientist out of NYU. Her name's Dr. Wendy Suzuki, and we were having a conversation. I actually met her. We were speaking at the same event. And I met her, and I was just blown away with her data. And she's been in her lab and working with her, her lab assistants. And she shared that exercise is one of the very few things that is able to stimulate something called neurogenesis. And neurogenesis basically means the creation of new brain cells. So neuro meaning brain, genesis means creation. And when I went to school, when I was in college, we were basically taught that as you go through life, you just lose your brain cells and that's it. You die. It's just like a climb downward, and this is just not true. That's not the case. Now we know that you can actually create new brain cells. However, it's not relegated to our entire brain from what our data shows right now. Specifically, she found that exercise is able to increase the production of brain cells, specifically in the hippocampus. And so the hippocampus is largely regarded as the memory center of your brain. And so obviously this is of the utmost importance. Obviously this is something we want to focus on because we want to be able to maintain, not only have a great memory now, but to be able to maintain our memory as we get a little bit older. And so that's one of the basic brain building principles. And it's understanding that your brain functions very much like your muscles do. All right. We know that we have our skeletal muscle, we have our heart muscle, but your brain, it's not exactly a muscle. It's kind of a mushy butter consistency. But this fatty organ is very fluid. It has a lot, it's largely made of water as well, but it functions a lot like a muscle does, in that when you exercise your brain, it literally develops, and we're going to talk about also how it can grow and get stronger. But much like your muscles, if you don't use it, you lose it. Your brain can also atrophy. And so these are the basic brain building principles. You can grow your brain and its function, or if you're not doing the things that we're going to be talking about today, your brain is going to go on that sometimes rapid decline, and we don't have to. And this is what the data shows. So I'm really excited to talk about this. So let's jump into the next slide. All right, so let's just right off the bat, let's talk about your brain and exercise and your IQ. So IQ has been this barometer that's been used for a long time in looking at how intelligent somebody is. It's really an intelligence quotient. Now, again, we fortunately know that this is just a small slice of what intelligence really looks like, because you can have great IQ in one thing over here and be an absolute genius, but maybe you suck at math. It doesn't make you any less of a genius. There are many different barometers to measure how smart somebody can be. So I just want to make that clear. But with that said, IQ is still one of those things that people are looking at and monitoring. And we've just got a massive amount of data on IQ. And so I just want to share a couple of studies with you guys. So first of all, this was done on kids. All right. So we're going to expand the age bracket here as well, because you're going to find out even stuff that we're doing now as adults can impact what happens with our offspring. All right, so elementary school kids, this particular study was done on elementary school kids, and they found that 40 minutes of daily exercise, just 40 minutes of daily exercise, this is basically like a nice recess or two, was able to increase their average IQ by 4 points. And 4 points increase in IQ, which is something that is largely considered to be static and very difficult to change. Exercise is something that can literally increase your IQ, okay? And so again, this is done on elementary school kids. Now looking at another study, and this is with older students, found that students who exercise before class were able to improve their test scores by 17% versus those who didn't work out before class, okay? 17% increase in their test scores. Also, those who were able to work out for 40 minutes before class improved their test scores an entire letter grade, all right? This can be in life, the difference between getting into a good school, the difference between being able to perform and get awards and scholarships. All of these things matter. And these are things that we can provide for our kids, provided that we still allow for them time to play and to express themselves and to move their bodies. And as many of you guys know, as the years have gone on and the United States has tried to, keep up with other countries, recess and physical activity, and specifically physical education and gym time, starts to go down. It's like we need less times playing, more time studying. And it's backfired. It really has backfired. And now we've got data to show why this matters and why this is so important. So really, there's nothing more important than having a fit brain when we're talking about IQ and we're talking about performance. When we're looking at specifically this kind of intelligence. Again, I started this off by saying this is not the only intelligence barometer, but what we consider an intelligence barometer when we're talking about school. So let's go ahead and jump to the next slide. All right. So now we're going to talk about brain hypertrophy. All right. Hypertrophy is a term that's generally tied to strength training and growing your muscles. This is when you get like, I just moved to California, right? So you get like, Arnold Schwarzenegger. I always think of Arnold Schwarzenegger when I think about hypertrophy. I don't know why, it's weird. But this is one of those things that this, again, translates over into what your brain can actually do. Specifically, so we've got, and multiple studies have already shown that physical activity generally can increase your brain volume. And this is very important, not just build your brain up and increase the brain volume, but also it's able to reduce the size and the number of age-related holes that occur over time in your brain's gray matter and white matter. Now, I've gotten the opportunity to see what this looks like. One of my really good friends, and he actually wrote a blurb for my next book, Dr. Daniel Amen. He has the largest database in the world of brain imaging scans, SPECT scans, where we can look at blood flow in the brain and brain activity. And his work was even used for like the movie Concussion and things of that nature. And we know that over time, these things can occur. We can get these holes in our brain. It's basically less connectivity happening in our brain, but we can do so much to fix those things and to prevent them. And that's the good news. So I just want to start with that hypertrophy in the brain. Number one, we know that by exercising, multiple studies have shown physical activity can not only increase your brain's bulk, but also to prevent age-related decay. And also we've got a randomized controlled trial, and this was published in the archives. And so any of the studies that I mentioned, just write them down. You can go and look them up yourself as well. This is a randomized controlled trial. So this is the gold standard of studies, published in the archives of internal medicine, found that resistance training promotes cognitive and functional brain plasticity. So I'm going to break down what those two different things are. So resistance training, so lifting weights with your body, literally translates to your brain getting stronger as well. And so just to break those two things down. So I said resistance training promotes cognitive and functional brain plasticity. functional plasticity. So plasticity, by the way, and this is what I talked with Dr. Wendy Suzuki about. She's one of the people who really pushed that data into the forefront of my thinking. This is the ability of the brain to, when we think about plastics, plastics are very malleable and changeable. It can be shaped into all kinds of crazy stuff, different forms and shapes and connectivity, but your brain has the ability to do the same thing. Functional plasticity is the brain's ability to move functions away from damaged areas of the brain and create new connections, right? So this is one of those crazy things that we would hear about in what's called spontaneous remission or spontaneous healing if somebody has a spinal cord injury. And there are so many documented cases of this, which is really weird and incredibly powerful. But the spine is severed. I mean, the brainstem is severed in a certain place, but the body finds a way and finds a new pathway and creates a new channel. And that person is able to maintain or regain function. And your brain has the same capacity of having an injury somewhere and it being able to create a new pathway. So that's functional plasticity. And that damage might not just come from a trauma, but it can come from just, age-related issues as well. So that's functional plasticity, improved by strength training. Structural plasticity is the brain's basic ability to change its physical structure as a result of learning. So simply when you're learning things, you're creating this neuroplasticity. And I just want to throw in a little sidebar. I didn't plan on talking about this, but the process of learning, guys, it's very simple. It's rudimentary. It's such a kindergarten level thing, but we overcomplicate it. Learning is basically taking something that you don't know and connecting it to something that you do know, right? So to give an example, it's like if we're trying to learn about, we'll say, computer programming, which is an incredibly complex thing. But then we relate that if maybe you're very intelligent. So for me, I didn't even want to touch the technology here. I don't want to push a button. I can learn more about tech if I relate it to how much I know about the human body. So I'm very well versed in biology, kinesiology, chemistry, all those things. But if there are connection points between computer programming and human programming that can help me to learn faster if I wanted to learn, versus me trying to learn this whole new thing. So I hope that makes sense. That was a kind of a big, broad example, but that's what learning really is. It's relating it to something that you don't know to something that you do know. So it's just like if people are wanting to, somebody's coming and they're trying to tell me about, I don't know, rocket science. And I could just be like, well, how's that like an orange? Just make it make sense to me, make it relate to something that I know about. All right, so let's move on. Well, actually, let's stay up here for one more second. I got to share this. So Harvard Medical School reported a study. This is a recent study on strength training specifically. I thought this was fascinating. What they discovered was that strength training actually helps your brain to be able to problem solve better. And it provides an opportunity for your brain to better overcome obstacles in a controlled, predictable environment, which is referred to, this is called mental resiliency. So strength training helps your brain to be more resilient in situations where you have to solve problems. Crazy. That's crazy. All right. And again, this one's coming out of Harvard Medical School. So one other thing here, we all know about what we refer to as this runner's high. And it's basically this release of endorphins, or these endorphins. One of the big pieces, not that it just makes you feel good, it's that it helps to kind of mask pain, right? That's kind of why exercise, because it can be physically challenging. And for some people, they just don't like the feeling of they think it, it's more painful than other people. Some people have embraced that pain, in a sense. It's just, pain is just a word we use to describe it. But we get this release of endorphins. And it's not just through running. You also get this through strength training. And one of the study revealed that strength training induces an increase in something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF for short. And brain-derived neurotrophic factor is basically like miracle grow for your brain. So when I'm talking about increasing your brain volume, increasing the capacity for neuroplasticity and connections, BDNF is it's like miracle grow. It really is. And helping to provide the fertile grounds for these things to take place. And strength training is like a huge leverage point to do this. So This doesn't mean that you have to go and hit the gym and throw barbells around, but just getting acclimated to using your own body as a resistance, you know, and that's where I really have encouraged people. I've been in this field for almost 20 years, and I really started off for about 10 of those years as a strength and conditioning coach. And my big mission was always to get folks to be more physically literate. So being able to use their own body within space.
Okay, so the next thing we have to do.
Oh, so to get our bodies more, to get more acclimated to using your body within space. And so what that looks like is whenever, like the whole society as we know it during this time. So folks that are watching this in the future, hopefully people watching this in like 10 years,
Okay,
like this is so awesome. But right now, all the gyms were shut down in our country, you know, and folks were relegated to, if some people, Amazon was sold out of dumbbells like that. Like you couldn't even get the little pink 3-pound weights, right? And so people had to become more educated about how to use their body and doing resistance training with their bodies. If you've got a body, you've got a gym, and you've got an opportunity no matter where you are, and you can start to see the world through a lens of play and activity when you become more physically literate. So I hope that makes sense. And I just want to lay the groundwork there when we're talking about strength training and we're talking about building the brain. And let's go ahead and move on to number 4. All right, so the muscle-brain connection, again, this is our topic here. We're looking at the various ways that this incredible connection takes place. Next, we're going to talk about how exercise is actually, you're exercising your genes. When you're strength training, when you're doing high-intensity interval training, when you're doing plyometric work, the list goes on and on, you're actually exercising your genes. Researchers at the University of Bristol found that exercise actually changes the expression of genes in your brain. And specifically, they noted that these were genes that have a heavy influence on your brain's ability to cope with stress. All right. So we have tens of thousands of genes, but understanding how important our brain is at regulating all of our other processes and understanding that stress in your brain is overtaxed with stress. This has an immediate trickle down effect to the rest of your physiology, right? So our perception of stress, we might not feel it in our heads. This is going to result in, you know, maybe our heart rate goes up. Maybe we start to feel anxiety, right? We start to feel maybe some burning in our chest or like turning in our stomachs, like just feeling uneasy. It's a cascade that starts from our perception that starts in our minds, right? It's so powerful to understand this and understand we can like literally take the handles of this. And many people, I know several people who are with us right now know that exercising is like your stress relief. Exercising is like your therapy. You know, I've heard many people say that over the years as well. It really does work that way in many facets in helping our bodies and our brains to be able to better cope with the stressors of life. Now, what I wanted to share, and this is really remarkable, I just put this in here at the last minute. I didn't know if I was going to talk about this, but I can't not share this. So exercise affects your genes, but listen to this. These benefits are also able to be paid forward to our offspring. Numerous studies have now confirmed that there are significant links between pregnant women's physical activity and the brains of their babies. For example, I found this 1996 study published in the Journal of Pediatrics showed that at age 5, children of moms who exercise regularly during pregnancy perform better on tests of general intelligence and oral language skills than children whose mothers did not exercise. Oh my God. We can literally make our babies smarter by moving, all right? Another study published in 2016 found that boys born to physically active mothers had higher scores on math and language tests than boys who were born from mothers who were sedentary moms. Now, I know about parent guilt, so I gotta say this. I know about dad guilt, mom guilt. This does not mean that we made mistakes with our kids, okay? We still have the opportunity. That's the great thing about humanity. This is like giving our children a little bit of an edge, but once we're here and we're sovereign individuals, we have the capacity to get all these benefits ourselves. So this is a great opportunity to go and exercise with our kids. So many of us, we separate exercise from family time, right? exercise is a lot of times something that our kids never see us do. We go off to this mysterious place called the gym, and we come back sweaty, and your kid has no idea what happened. Instead, like, let's spend more time and exercise with our family, exercise with our kids, you know, even just going out for family walks, or, you know, hiking, or, you know, even doing group exercise, you know, exercise training programs, things like that. There's something that I really believe is that families that train together remain together. All right. Do not try to, that's my copyright. All right. I haven't done anything with it. You could say it. So just keep this in context, that this isn't just about us. This is also about our offspring too, in strange ways. So really, really cool stuff there. And I don't want to spend too much more time here. I think you guys have got the gist of this. So let's move on to the next one. All right. Now this one. So we're looking at the defensive power of exercise. So we already touched on a little bit about how there's protective aspects of exercise when it comes to protecting your brain from age-related decay, even from trauma. Now, exercise, and right now, and I know that you guys, a lot of people aren't aware of this, but Alzheimer's has just been steadily rising up the top 10 causes of death in our country. And it seems like this thing, you know, like, for me, when I thought of Alzheimer's prior to getting into this field at this level, I would think of the movie The Notebook, you know, and there's just like this romantic story. She doesn't really remember him, but then she does a little bit. But for folks that have actually experienced, you know, seeing Alzheimer's within their families, they understand that it's far different and more complex than just not remembering your name or not remembering, you know, family members. You literally can start to forget how to swallow your food. All right. This illness is incredibly destructive and painful to witness. And this is something that,
Okay.
we have to mute whoever that is. I'm glad the kid is there with you. So we have to understand, why has Alzheimer's been skyrocketing recently? And it has a lot to do with the way that we live our lives now. You know, like, it's become another kind of silent epidemic. And we've also become, coincidentally, more sedentary than we ever have in human history. You know, and this is not a coincidence. You know, these things are directly correlated. Physical activity is correlated with having more dopamine receptors in a part of the brain known as the basal ganglia. And this is a group of neuronal structures that are involved in movement, in learning, in emotion. And levels of these dopamine receptors are correlated also with brain plasticity in this area. And dopamine receptor loss, this is very important. Dopamine receptor loss is one of the main issues or main causative agents behind Parkinson's disease. This is something that we can directly impact. Recently, researchers at the University of Southern California, they use a dopamine antagonist as a radioactive tracer so they can actually see where this is happening going in the brain. They found that patients who walked 3 times per week for 8 weeks increased the number of their dopamine receptors in the basal ganglia. Just walking 3 times a week has a massive impact at preventing Parkinson's disease. These are things that we seem, I can't stand it that we get to this place where we feel like such victims and there's nothing that we can do. There are things that we can do. There are things we can do. So I just wanted to share that and talk about a little bit of the defensive power of exercise when we're talking about brain health. We can help to prevent significantly Parkinson's, and somebody has to mute. I'm sorry to be like a dad. I'm sorry. We can help to also prevent Alzheimer's and decrease those rates. So let's go ahead and jump to the next one. Get a drink. All right. So next up, we're going to talk about balance training. And you might be like, well, what the heck is balance training? I'm not going to tell you yet. First, I'm going to talk about the hippocampus a little bit more, because I mentioned this is like the memory center of the brain, but this is an ancient, it's located in an ancient part of the brain known as the limbic system. And this plays an important role in converting data from your short-term memory to your long-term memory. And so what you guys are recording right now, this is short-term memory. Some stuff is not even going to make it to short-term memory, but it gets consolidated. Your brain is pulling this data in, but it gets converted into long-term memory, like something that's more solid and stable. You can go and easily recall. Largely during sleep is one of the big places that memory consolidation takes place. But also something I'm going to talk about can help to improve this process as well. But also this part of the brain is responsible for something called spatial navigation. So this is being able to operate your body, like, and navigate around your city, for example, navigating around your neighborhood, right? Spatial navigation. And a study published in 2017, this was published in the journal, peer-reviewed journal, Scientific Reports, revealed that balance training improves memory and spatial cognition in adults. All right, both of these things are improved, memory and spatial cognition. So being aware of your body in space, right? Proprioception as well. It's like, this is one of those things, if you think about somebody like Tom Brady and just being able to move around in that pocket ever so slightly, it's just like a sixth sense that takes place. It is a sixth sense in a sense. It is a sixth sense in a sense, because we have a hyper ability. Even your skin has receptors that are able to read the environment. It's very, very powerful. We just think that it's just here, seeing through our eyes. But you have an awareness of your body. You have an awareness. Have you ever felt like somebody's like standing too close to you and you can't even see them, right? And you're like, back up, like we all have that capacity. Balance training can help us to improve that capacity. And it's incredibly valuable for sport. So let's talk about a little bit actually, let me share one more study. So this is a piece of the study that I mentioned earlier. Study participants who did balance training twice a week for 12 weeks had significant improvements in memory and spatial navigation compared to the control group who did not do the balance training. And so what does balance training look like? What the heck is balance training? So this is things that include like single leg exercises, or dual leg exercises as well with resistance, things like bands, things that have like this kind of plasticity to them that make things like you have to engage more muscle fibers and strange, connections in your body to make things more balanced. And the use of equipment as well. So we've got cool things out there like, resistance band, like I mentioned, wobble boards and things of the like. But we can also build proprioception through exercises that improve speed and balance. Things like box jumps are incredible for improving proprioception. I mentioned single leg exercises. So what does that look like? Single leg squats. And you might be like, I can't do a single leg squat or a pistol squat. It's probably the best exercise name there is, but you can. There are various versions of that. You can do it from sitting in a chair, putting one leg up and holding on to something and standing up. There are like super beginner levels all the way up to the advanced pistol squats. And I've even done pistol squats holding weights, for example. Not to brag, but I kind of did. Slack lines, things like that have become popular. People just throwing up slack line in their backyard. Things that we would do as kids, like you're always trying to balance on stuff, and, even going for a walk, you see the world through a lens of play. Busu balls, footwork, like using the ladder and doing footwork drills and things like that. These are all helpful in building up our proprioception. Again, this kind of really interesting sixth sense that we all have. All right, so let's move on to the next one. Okay, so we got two more areas we're going to cover. These are the last two. So universal brain building exercise. And I refer to this as a universal brain building exercise that I'm about to share because of every single thing that the human body is designed to do. We can do some amazing things with this body. We can, I have a 19-year-old son who plays college football. And I know you're looking at me like, how does he have a 19-year-old son? Like, how old is this guy? It's the nutrition, TB12. But here's the thing. My son is 19 years old. He could deadlift like 500 pounds. He squats probably close to 400 pounds. We can do some amazing things with our body, right? But are we designed to do that? Are we actually designed? Like when we were born, the human, evolution were we designed to put a huge barbell on our back and squat 400 pounds? It's debatable. We can do it and we can get some wonderful benefits from it if we do it properly. But at the same time, what are we actually designed to do? The one thing as far as movement that we know we're for certain designed to do is walk. It's what we are hardwired to do. It's what our genes actually expect us to do is to walk. So research conducted at New York University School of Medicine, scientists there recently found that, and this is an animal study, that mice running frequently on wheels had higher level of BDNF. Now, I'm not a big fan of animal studies, but sometimes it's just the context. We're going to get into some human studies as well. But I just want to plant the seed. We haven't confirmed it yet as far as, just walking with BDNF. But we do have several studies pointed to, things like strength training and running can increase BDNF, but probably walking does as well. And it appears, so this is a human study that I'm going to share. This is from 2016. Found that study participants who ran on treadmills, so this is running and walking. This is probably going to be a little bit lower level of that. Elevated blood serum levels of BDNF. And this was following about 4 months period. And what happened was these participants in this study were able to more accurately draw pictures from memory than at the beginning of the study. Their working memory improved significantly, also oral memory, and the list goes on and on. So most studies advocate the benefits of moderate intensity cardio. So I should have said that I'm setting the pace for walking here in a moment. But walking, honestly, is not that sexy when it comes to fitness, especially if you're like, people would come into my gym, years ago, and they would tell me, I've been walking, trying to lose weight. And in my mind, I'll be like, you're never going to get there. You're going to have to speed that walk up, but it was so ignorant. Walking is like literally the best exercise. And so now just talking about a little bit with cardiovascular exercise, now let's move on to walking and look at specifically what we see in the brain. This is a 2007 study conducted by German researchers found that daily walking was statistically able to improve working memory, right? So again, this is like data input and being able to process and put things into action to be able to recall as well, just, practical data. In a Stanford study, and this is really fascinating, listen to this. This is one of the coolest things, and I hope you really get this. A Stanford study found that walking was able to increase something called creative inspiration by an average of 60% versus sitting and being sedentary. This effect was evident during and shortly after walking anywhere between 5 and 16 minutes. Specifically, what was enhanced was something called divergent thinking. It's a form of creativity called divergent thinking. This is what we refer to as like thinking outside the box, not thinking within the standard rules or we tend, unfortunately, many of us to think very linear. Like when we try to work on a problem and try to figure this problem out, this has to be the way to figure it out. When it's usually there can be dozens or even hundreds of different ways to figure out this same thing, but we get so stuck in our linear thinking, we don't see the bigger picture. And so going for a walk, and many people have experienced this, just getting out of whatever they're working on, go for a walk, idea comes to you, a new idea, dynamic way of thinking about something. But now we have some data on this. All right, so this one, again, is out of Stanford. Significant improvement in creative inspiration, 60% improvement simply by going for a walk. So this is the universal brain building exercise, getting out and walking. We have some early evidence for increase in BDNF, but also the improvement in creativity, divergent thinking, and so much more. So let's go ahead and jump to our final slide here. Exercise, emotion, and team connection. So I'm going to refer you guys to a resource. I have an episode of my show. Again, it's the Model Health Show. It's available on all podcast platforms. But I interviewed one of my favorite researchers. She's a health psychologist, Kelly McGonigal. All right, Kelly McGonigal. She has one of the biggest, most popular TED Talks ever in looking at the relationship between stress and perception. And in her TED Talk, she shared this fascinating data on how our bodies and our brains' response to stress is dependent on how we perceive the stress. If we think that the stress is killing us, it will happen as such. And if we believe that the stress is making us stronger and better in our perception of stress, we actually can become more resilient. But in this particular episode, we talked about the work from her latest work called The Joy of Movement. And it was so fascinating because there's evolutionary advantages to exercise. Through our evolution, we would have throughout the day moments of movement where we would, as a tribe, go and hunt together or gather food together. And this was just built into the system. But what was found is that when we exercise, when we move, when we go into that practice of hunting, but today we'll just kind of go and hunt for, you know, the missing dumbbell at the gym. But when we're going hunting, we are releasing chemistry in our brain that makes us more willing to connect and share with other people. Historically, why would you go and make a kill and you did all the work, but yet, you know, Uncle Charlie, who, you know, I'm just giving an old caveman name, but Uncle Charlie, who's kind of a douche, why would you want to feed him and you just went out and made this big kill? It's because you feel better. You feel you've released all of this brain chemistry that makes you more compassionate, makes you more willing to share and more willing to connect. We're hardwired to have exercise make us connect more, make us more empathetic and compassionate. It's built into how we're designed. It's just so interesting that today we don't have to do those things to procure our livelihood and our food. We're working to kind of simulate those things by going to the gym or going out for a jog or whatever the case might be for our training and our movement. But those things, and I know you've seen moments of this in your life, make you a better person. These things make you more willing and excited about life, more willing to connect, more willing to share and to help other people. For some people, like I mentioned, the gym is their therapy. For some people I mentioned, working out is their major stress relief. It makes us show up better, and it makes us show up better for ourselves and also the people that we care about. So there's a hard wiring to this that I want to share with you. There's a basis in science that exercise can literally make you a better person. And if we can incorporate this into our family, our nuclear family, and also into our communities, we can truly change the world, in a world that needs it very much right now. And movement is a big part of that. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. It's great to share this information with you. And we can jump into, if you guys got some questions, we can stick around and do a Q&A.
Anthony, can you look at the chat box and see if there's some questions for Shawn? And while we're doing that, Shawn, I think at TB12, we look to make a change immediately. When a client comes in the very first day, we want to make a change. So if you had a client come in and we're looking to make that connection, I think walking being the universal movement would be a good place to start. Would that be a suggestion you'd make?
Absolutely. And just even incorporating it anywhere, you know. So for myself personally, even my son, you know, we want to get in, we want to lift some heavy weights, we want to throw some things around, but maybe just adding on a 10-minute walk at the end with your gym buddy. You know, you guys can chop it up and talk about whatever. But the process of walking is so rejuvenative and it has so many underlying benefits that I think if any of us can figure out a way, for me, this is my major form of exercise now, to be honest. Like I'll just go for a 10 to 20 minute walk 2 times a day now. And also this is where I get so many different ideas and just a time to process.
Nice.
Absolutely. All right. So we have Roger. He's got 2 questions. Let's go with the first one is, what is better for the muscle-brain connection, brain exercises or physical exercises?
What's better for the muscle-brain connection, brain exercise or physical exercise? That's a great question.
It is, isn't it?
Whose question was that?
Roger Balducci.
Roger. Also, can you go to the next slide for me, please, too?
Absolutely. Let me just get out of this chat and give that a go. Perfect.
So that's an outstanding question. And so where my research actually started in brain wellness was just looking at the kind of what we would consider mental exercises. Sudoku and crossword puzzles and all these different things. And reading has phenomenal impacts on our brains as well. Really cool stuff with memory. And also I've had the unique opportunity. One of my best friends is, he's an accelerated learning expert. He might be the most popular accelerated learning expert in the world. He works with everybody from, Will Smith to freaking, heads of movie studios and universities, Harvard, list goes on and on. His name's Jim Quick. And so getting that data from him, we would talk about these things in the context of memory related exercises, what we think like mental labor. But one of the things him and I start to really cross over on was how much physical movement impacted our brains. And one of our last times that we hung out together, we actually did a video together where we went to the gym, and I took Jim to the gym, and we were looking at we were talking about some of the things that we talked about today and how it can impact the brain. So both. The answer is both. I cannot say conclusively which one is more important, but we do know we need to do some of that heavy lifting for our brains and really like challenge ourselves, whether it is a word search or whether it is looking into some different research. One of the things that I'm going to encourage, and I'm so grateful for this because I get to just share things off the cuff that come up in my heart. But I think it's really important to look at data from a different perspective. Like right now, there's so much information out there. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of valid information that's overlooked or even vilified because we have these self-serving biases, right? These cognitive biases that limit our thinking. And if we're coming into something with the self-serving bias or this cognitive bias, and we see some data that doesn't match up with what we believe things to be, we shun it. We talk bad about it. We'll totally ignore it. And we can miss out on transformational information. And this is how science actually works. And it historically works this way where new data comes out and it gets vilified, like even hand washing. Dr. Inez Semmelweis, he was drugged through the mud. The entire medical establishment hated him. Like, I'm not gonna wash my hands. This guy's a moron. Now look, and he actually, the story goes, from all of the bad press and just, negativity, like he lost his mind. He went crazy. So we have to understand that new information is usually vilified, goes through the process, but you can be ahead of the curve by bringing an open mind to things and thinking from different perspectives. So I just wanted to share that. So both.
Both.
Mental lifting and physical lifting are both going to help to give you an outstanding brain.
There you go. Nice.
Right. So next question that he had was, which 3 exercises would you recommend we do straight away to improve our muscle-brain connection?
Great question. I'll tell you mine. And I didn't get into this. Actually, I think it's right here. No, I can't. It's a whole different thing, but high intensity interval training. So this is a combination of a lot of these things. There's a strength component to it, a resistance training component to it, because you're hitting different types of muscle fibers, your fast twitch and slow twitch fibers and intermediate fibers. But also you have the cardiovascular dynamic part, and then you have the kind of recovery slow part to it. I think it fits everything together in there really well. I've been talking about high intensity interval training for about 15 years. And now it's like everybody knows what it is, but are we doing it? And this is something that we can overdo. Some people have made it, that's their whole thing. Your body really needs to cover. If you're doing it effectively, where you're really going hard for like a sprint session. So this could be on a row machine. This could be on a ski erg. This could be on a stationary bike. You don't have to get out and run necessarily, but that capacity to really put your all into it and then to recover, you get the benefits, so many of the benefits that we talked about already. So high intensity interval training would be one. Some form of heavy lifting. So like low rep, heavier weight. So I'm a big fan of deadlifting and squats for that. And then walking. Those would be my top 3.
Great. All right. Next, we have a question from Bill. Do you believe in any vitamin supplements specific to enhancing brain function?
We could do a whole webinar on this one.
That's another
Your brain is literally made of the things that you eat. Like your brain is made of the food that you eat, the water you drink, and the air you breathe, period. It is the most important thing. If we're talking about bare bones, what is the most important thing? It's what you're making the structure out of. So you could be making your brain out of ice cream sandwiches, or you could be making it out of like real, sustainable, high quality nutrition. Not to say you can't have an ice cream sandwich, but you know, you want the majority of your diet to be based on real foods. And just to give a couple of nutritional pieces, and again, this is something I'm talking about in my new book coming out later this year. But everybody's seen the data now, by now, I hope, about omega-3 fatty acids. The reason that this matters so much is that your brain is predominantly fat. Well, it's predominantly water, but as far as the macronutrients. But omega-3s are one of the few nutrients that you can consume from your diet, and it can actually cross the blood-brain barrier and actually get to your brain cells and nourish your brain. So many of the things we eat, your brain has the blood-brain barrier. It is very exclusive in what's allowed to get in there. So omega-3s are a true brain-building nutrient that is related to, and man, like some of the studies I have in this book related to memory and related to protection against dementia and Alzheimer's and things like that. So omega-3s, another one would be, I'm just going to list off a few so we can move on to another question, but omega-3s are critical. MCTs can also do that same thing. So medium chain triglycerides can cross that blood-brain barrier and nourish your brain. And also produce ketone bodies, even if you're not on a ketogenic diet. So fats are obviously super important, and antioxidants are important as well. And there's a lot of like debate about antioxidants, but your brain is one of those major places that utilizes antioxidants. Lion's mane medicinal mushroom, University of Malaya did some research and found that lion's mane medicinal mushroom is able to stimulate neurogenesis and is protective. They're studying it for helping to recover from traumatic brain injuries. Again, I could do a whole thing on this. I'm not going to spend much more time on it. It's a great question, but yes, nutrition matters a lot here.
All right. I'm just trying to go into questions that are a little less specific and just more general here. So I'm going to go to David, who is asking, when is the best time to work out, and what exercises would you recommend to increase mental endurance?
That's an amazing question. Absolutely amazing. And it's so funny. I've studied this for quite some time, and I've been really pressing this into popular culture. So a big component with our exercise, as you guys know, everything is really tied together, but we tend to separate them, and people become a specialist in one thing, right? And I heard this statement from one of my really good friends, a physician, that a specialist is somebody who knows more and more about less and less. And we start to become this tunnel vision, and we don't see the integration of things. And one of the things that ties all this together is our sleep. And during your sleep is where memory consolidation takes place. It's where your brain really heals from all the stuff that's going on in our lives. It's where your brain is producing all these restorative enzymes and hormones like human growth hormone. List goes on and on. But this particular study that I'm going to share with you in the exercise timing, this was done at Appalachian State University. They took exercisers, they had them train at 3 specific times, exclusively throughout a study. They had them train at 7 a.m. for one part of the study, 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. in the evening. They found that morning exercisers spent the most time in the deepest, most anabolic stage of sleep. They tended to sleep longer, they had more efficient sleep cycles, and they also had about a 25% greater drop in blood pressure at night. And that's correlated with turning off that fight or flight sympathetic nervous system so you can actually get good sleep. And sleep is so powerful and important for your brain. Again, we could talk for hours just about that one thing. So from that basis alone, I would say that the best time to exercise is in the morning. Not to say that like you get it in when you can, you know, but I do want you to be mindful of not exercising too late in the evening, because what we do, we're increasing our core body temperature. We're producing stress hormones. Those things are the antithesis of getting good sleep, you know? So I had a client come into my office when I was running my clinic, and he did like jujitsu at like, I don't know, the class was like 9 p.m. or 8 p.m. and he was trying to get to bed at 10. And he's like, I just can't sleep. I'm just like tossing and turning. And I'm like, take another jujitsu class, change the schedule. And then he slept fine. You know, it's like, this wasn't rocket science, but sometimes we're so in it, we can't like zoom out and see, you know, what the issue is. So I hope that that helps to answer the question. And as far as the best form of exercise to, did he say build mental strength against stress? Is that right?
Mental endurance.
I'm sorry?
Mental endurance.
Mental endurance. Oh yeah, yeah. So I would say based on the data that we went through today is I think strength training is what we have the best data on. That was out of Harvard University that directly improves mental resiliency and being able to cope better with stress.
Yeah, Shawn, I thought you did a great job of just putting a lot of the research out there and showing that we may not need to go to a gym or get gym equipment to get a lot of the benefits for our brain. So this leads into our next question. Like, what fitness equipment would you recommend everyone have at home to supplement or support the work we do in our gyms? It's crushing when gyms are forced to close right now. So.
Yeah, this is a very timely question. Again, I think that real talk, this really boils down to physical literacy and just being able, there's so much you could do with your body. Now, if I had to choose something, you know, some pieces of equipment to have, I mean, just get yourself one kettlebell, you know, one heavy kettlebell. You could do probably 100 different exercises, you know, from, you know, lunges with it, you know, holding it up in a goblet style, or, you know, Turkish get-ups, and, you know, single arm presses, and the list goes on and on. I think that it's such a versatile piece of equipment that I would say just invest in one heavy kettlebell. If you could, that would be my preference.
You just made our CEO, John Burns, really happy. He loves kettlebells.
Smart man.
Yeah, he is.
All right. So I will just start wrapping up here because we're getting closer to that 1 o'clock. Thanks, Shawn. Thanks so much for really setting that data out for everyone to learn, and how we can affect our brains. Brian, anything to add?
Just advance that slide, Anthony, so we could.
Yeah.
Thank you. There we go. Highly recommended, Shawn. I really back one up, Anthony, because that podcast is awesome. Because I love research, but I'm like you. We got to get to the point, and it's got to be applicable. I have to make it understandable to my clients, and you do a really great job of that on the podcast. I really enjoy it. So
thank you. That means a lot, guys. And I can see all the messages, everybody. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for the love. I'm grateful to be able to add some value to your day. I hope you had a good time, and you know, you're going to go into your weekend on a high note.
Absolutely.
And, thank you, guys.
You too. Have a great weekend. Have a great rest of the day, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Thanks again, Shawn. You're the best, man.
Thank you.